on this computer. Okay. So a number of years ago, I was asked to celebrate Sunday morning communion with a group of historical reenactors, people who role play in a very authentic way life in the 1700s. It was this really interesting exercise on why, you'll find out why I'm mentioning this and telling you this story soon. To be authentic myself, I wore my cassock and surplice, clergy fashion at the time, and celebrated communion using an obscure service called the north-facing service, where in more Puritan times, the priest stood on the north side or the end of the altar, something that you would rarely have ever see today. Now, around the same time, the 16th and 17th century, it was illegal for Anglican priests to write their own sermons. So instead, they were required to read a chapter from the Book of Homilies every Sunday morning, a book written in the 16th century when church, get this, lasted 3 hours, and the sermon was approximately 26 pages or more or less long, consuming by itself about an hour and a half of a parishioner's time. Now, getting back to the reenactors, to use the language of the day, I decided that it might be appropriate, since we were out in the field that morning, to read a few pages, not all 26, from the Rogation service from the Book of Homilies. So what is this I talk about? Well, Rogation Tide, as it is known, and we did celebrate it this past week, is the ancient tradition and annual kickoff of the planting season. A time of celebration and a time to give thanks for all the good things the Creator provides, the land, the seeds, and the people who grow the food that we eat. It's a tradition that we still celebrate and embrace in the church today as we begin to prepare gardens and fields for planting. Now, in spite of the language in the Book of Homilies, which I must say, barely understand, it wasn't an easy read. It was an enlightening experience, and that's what it was. It gave a clear explanation of our relationship with both the land and our neighbors. Rogation Sunday in the 16th century involved walking the parish boundaries. That practice over the centuries was understood to remind people, in particular men and young boys, where the parish boundaries were and to be better prepared to fight to protect them. But in fact, assuming that one could stay awake during that 1.5 hour sermon, the Book of Homilies kept people focused on the original intent, reminding people then and now that there was a much more caring and sharing approach, and that is to know where our boundaries end and our neighbors begin, so we can love our neighbors, be good neighbors, and respect the people around us. As it explains in the Book of Homilies, the land defined by boundaries and all that's in it and around it is something that should be considered sacred. We, as stewards of creation, should care for it with great reverence and responsibility. And that we should also, knowing our limits, respect our neighbors and not damage the land, the air, or the water essential to all living things, including ourselves. The last half of the last line in this past week's Rogation Sunday Gospel reading from John is part of what we call the Great Commandments. Love one another as I have loved you. Today, we understand that loving another extends beyond the boundaries of humanity to all creation. The earth, the air, the water, plants and trees, animals, fish, birds, and even those pesky insects that will soon appear. We need to understand that they are our neighbors, not our possessions. Understand that they are all those generation humans and otherwise yet to come. Understand that our neighbors are those who live in the community and those who live beyond the boundaries of the community. When our community encompasses all that live on Mother Earth and all those yet to come, loving our neighbor has to also include loving Mother Earth, the source of all life. So once I learned that, I thought I had it nailed. I thought I had this complete understanding of this love thy neighbor thing. Then, last Friday, I participated in our weekly online morning prayer. That morning, Margaret Sagar read a story called Epiphany and the Beans, a story from a bestseller most of you may have heard of called Braiding Sweetgrass.
Mm.
In Epiphany and the Beans, the writer refers to Mother Earth as a good and loving mother, providing for our every need. She asked if we see the soil as not only good for growing veggies, but she also asked if instead we might understand the soil to be one expression of Mother Earth's love for us, and provides a list of other ways Mother Earth expresses love for us.
Mm.
During spring or rogation times, Mother Earth's love for us is visible in the miracle of seeds that sprout from the earth, in her gift to us of clean water, clean air, and rich soil, the gift of wildflowers just beginning to appear. It's enough to make you fall in love with the earth, isn't it? It's evidence of God's love in the fact that not only do we love Mother Earth, but Mother Earth loves us back. And we wouldn't harm anything that loves us so much, would we? When we realize that our relationship with God's gift, Mother Earth, is a sacred bond instead of a one-way street, it's harder to take the earth for granted. So Jesus said, love your neighbor, all of creation, as yourself, as much as creation loves you. All the ingredients have been there since the beginning. The earth is a beautiful garden bursting forth in abundance. May we, planted in rich soil, be nurtured by the Creator, bearing fruit and scattering seeds of love for all creation. And somehow or other, we do that. We do that. And there are examples of how we do that within this, I hate to say organization, within this network that we call DEN. And I can think of a couple of really fine examples, but I look at the screen and I can think of examples all around. But I think about people like, and this is the big question. The question of the night is, what does this diocesan environment network do? What should it do? What does it mean to you? What should it mean to you? How can we walk with people on their spiritual journey, caring for creation, as well as the practical things that people need to be better equipped to care for creation? And so I look at somebody like Nancy, okay, and we could look at it as, oh, Nancy's a coordinator of DEN and she does this ecological grief support group. But I don't see it that way. What I see is that DEN provides Nancy with an opportunity to live out her call to her particular environmental ministry. And that is caring for people who are experiencing ecological grief, setting up Thursday evening gatherings with a committee of people who are also just as passionate. And so what I hope we can do is provide a bit of a forum. We can provide some support. We can be a resource. We don't have to come up with any of the ideas, but we can do this when we do it together, because as we know, I mean, there was an ad years ago where all the little fish were being chased by the big fish until the little fish formed a big clump, acted together, and they chased the big fish away. We do have strength in numbers when we come together, and we supply information, expertise, support to people in their faith journey as environmental activists. And then we pass it on to others and inspire others to do the same thing. And for some, it can be carrying a picket sign on the street. And I've seen Tori do that really well. For others, it can be more hands-on, recycling things, the practical aspects of greening church buildings that Handy and Tim and Eleanor engage in. It can be communication like Carol. It can be leading book studies like Bruce, Marion. It can be so many things. It can be the perseverance that Johanna shows. It can be the talent that's demonstrated by our artists, by Dorothy, by Donna, by Wendy, by Dale. It can be the passion and the understanding of science that people like Stella and Judith and Anne Marie and others show. It can be the unending leadership that Linda shows. It can be all of those. Did I miss anybody? It can be the theological that Margaret can bring. It can be the intellectual that Melanie brings. It can be the commitment that Andrew brings. It can be, who's missing? I don't know. Did I miss anybody? You and Elizabeth. Oh, I listened to a morning prayer she did a couple of weeks ago. I was blown right away. It can be the professional expertise that Ada brings. There's so many. Lyd as an artist. Yes, I forgot you as one of the artists, Lyd. Carol Scott and her poetry and her enthusiasm. You know, everybody brings. Eva, passionate about advocacy. She compiles every week all of these letters, all of these things that people do. And my favorite type of ministry is just being people's cheerleader. Just hoping that I can provide some support in some way. Tammy supplied me with it because she gave me an opportunity to preach in her parish. And when I saw her say, get out there on the street next week, it was incredible. Everybody does something. I don't think I've missed anybody because every one of you is so important. So here we are tonight. Some of you are come at it from the art aspect. Some of you come at it from the book study aspect. Some of you come at it from the Thursday evening gathering aspect. Some of you provide us with morning prayer once a week. Some of you demonstrate on the streets. Others are committed to recycling. And some of you are good at the issues, the resource, natural resources and how we have to care for the province and provinces that we serve. So everybody has their particular ministry. And I guess that's one of the things that I was hoping we could share tonight. And so I guess the thing is, where do we go from there? How do we, as a group of people who have come together in community, and we take it out to other communities? Linda is like the Kairos Halifax person. And, we have other people who are, we have people from the Council of Canadians. We have people from the Ecology Action Center. We have Anne Marie, you're one of them, right? And so because this is a network, it's not a structure where we have to do what we do and believe that whatever we do is the way it should be. It's how do we support the artists? And well, they definitely inspire us to care for creation. So I'm going on an awful long time. We do have an hour and a half tonight. And the bishop, is the bishop here? Not yet? Okay. I'm not leaving the bishop out, am I? Because she's been very supportive.
Oh, she is here.
She is here. Where is she? I can't see her.
That's on page 2.
She's on page 2.
We're proud today.
Okay, she's here somewhere, but I'm still, would you wave?
No picture.
There, no picture. Oh, there she is. Okay.
Everyone, we're on 2-page screen today. We haven't been before, so you can switch between screens.
And so we have a new bishop, Sandra Fife, and I would you like to say anything at this point in time?
There
Because
she is.
she's a wonderful support. Bishop Sandra has been connected to the network for a number of years and has made it here tonight. So would you like to say anything as we engage in this conversation, Bishop Sandra? Or is she frozen?
Who's in there?
I think she might be frozen. Okay, we'll leave that at that right now. Until we see her move. So anyway, so what has this experience been like for you this past year? Oh, I lost audio and now my laptop is saying it needs to restart. She'll be back.
I'm going to speak up, Marion, because I have to leave in a couple of minutes. So
Sure, please.
yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you first and the other people who organize these meetings, because I found them extremely helpful. The whole, usually I work in a totally secular sort of environment, and this sort of brings me back to an inspirational and spiritual place. So I appreciate that most. And I really enjoy hearing the people that you bring in to speak to the group. I feel like I'm so much more aware of things going on in the area. So that's been great. And I'm looking forward to continuing with the group just to see where this group goes, because I think it's very rich. And just like to say, I enjoyed it immensely. And the prayers when I could attend were also quite inspirational. So all the best. I have to go and listen to my friend do a reading of her new poetry book.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
It's such a joy to have you around, Anne-Marie.
Thank you.
And
Yep.
give our best to Alida.
We'll do that.
Ah, yes,
Yeah.
please. There are 2 book launches apparently tonight. So,
Really
So-
good about this, yes.
so, yeah, so I guess, oh, there, and she's moving now. There. Oh, no, don't put yourself on mute. Bishop Sandra, we'd like you to introduce yourself, maybe talk a little bit about your history with DEN.
My name is Sandra Fife, and for those who I haven't met, I'm the Bishop of Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. And probably I'll go back to say that before I talk about just briefly experience with DEN, that really probably the biggest influence earlier on in my life connecting me with environmental issues was in working with Environment Canada. When my background is in public relations, and I had a job as a marketing and public relations coordinator for the Cape Breton Parks. So it was the Canadian Park Service, Parks Canada, but it was under Environment Canada at that time. And so I worked with Cape Breton Highlands National Park, as well as some of the historic sites on Cape Breton Island. And it was there that I probably met really passionate, I did meet really passionate environmentalists, people predominantly who worked for the national park. But from them, I really kind of got a sense of the earth in a new way, as something sacred to be respected and cared for. And so it was interesting, I found, when I moved from that work eventually into training for ministry and working for the church, that I found it interesting that Environment Canada had a more, I felt at the time at least, a more sacred sense of the earth, or a sense of the earth's sacredness is probably what I should say, than at the time the church did. So I learned more about caring for the earth working for Environment Canada than I really did initially working with the church. But I tried to sort of carry over that philosophy into my ministry and think about things like recycling as a spiritual discipline, not just as something practical or that the government made you do. So that is kind of part of what I've really tried to integrate into my life, is recognizing care of the earth as something that is part of not only our baptismal calling as Christians, for those of us who are, but it really is a spiritual discipline that we're called to care for the earth. So I became part of the Diocesan Environment Network a while back when it developed. I haven't been as active in attending regular sessions, but I have participated with the Stations of Creation. Our parish used those a few years ago when I was in the parish of Horton in Wolfville, and we found that inspiring and moving. So I've certainly incorporated concern for the earth and care for the earth into my ministry in parishes that I've served in. And certainly there's been lots of interest from people in the parishes I've served in about that those issues as well. So marking Earth Day, trying to find ways to help people make those connections between faith and creation has been important. We also in our parish have a parishioner who, my former parish, have a parishioner who operates the only quiet garden east of, I think it's Montreal. And so that was another piece where I worked with that. I was part of, I guess, kind of not really a committee or a board, but an advisory panel, I guess. And so I was one of the religious folks that was on that panel with my parishioner and with a Baptist pastor in our community. But then we also had connections with the Harriet Irving Center. And so working with horticulturalists, arborists, so working directly with people whose ministry, they might not put it that way, but it was a ministry, was very intentional care for the earth and creation. So I've had lots of that cross connection with people, sort of interdisciplinary, I guess, connection with people who are involved in care for the earth. And we had a display about the quiet garden as part of your eco-justice fair that was in the Hydrostone a few years ago as well. So, and I was really delighted to see, again, that interaction between people for whom this is a spiritual, is intentionally a spiritual practice or a spiritual concern, people of faith who come at it from that perspective, as well as people from other agencies and groups that work to, further care of the environment and protection of the environment. So that's one of the things I found most inspiring about this group, that ability to kind of find common ground with others who share concerns, but the concern for the earth may come from a different place, or there may be different reasons for that concern. But we bring who we are and what we have, and we work collaboratively on common issues or areas of common concern. So I found that really inspiring. So I don't know if there's anything more I can say, but I mean, I know that when I met with the coordinators of the Diocesan Environment Network, and they asked, what's your vision for this group? I think I said to them, I don't have a vision for this group because the things you're doing are more than I could have ever imagined. That just the ways you've been able to adapt with COVID, the ways you've been able to gather people, and the way you've been able to transcend geography by meeting online in this way, responding to anxiety that people have about the climate crisis, finding ways to pray together and support our ability to kind of reflect care for creation through gathering and prayer. I mean, all the things you've done, the photo display, like the art show, all these are just tremendous, and I wouldn't have thought of half of these ideas. So I think you are the people who have the vision, and my role is to support your vision, not to create one for you, but to try to do what I can to support what you're doing and all the advocacy that's going on. There's just so many things that are happening through this group that I find really encouraging, that give me hope. And I did include a small paragraph. I didn't have much space to write, but we had to do a report for our provincial synod, which is the Anglican churches and Anglican diocese in Eastern Canada, Quebec and Atlantic Canada. And I was talking about rejoicing in hope and what are the things that give us cause for rejoice, or how are we rejoicing in spite of what's going on around us. And your group was one of the things I highlighted. So this network was one of the things I highlighted in terms of how you've been able to draw people together in the ways that I talked about. That to me is a sign of real hope for the future. So thank you.
Thank you. It does have a lot of moving parts, I have to admit. And so we have people from so many different aspects of this network. we for a minute we had somebody too from like the Council of Canadians, but Anne Marie is connected to the EAC, and and Tori represents us with the Nova Scotia Environmental Network, and so we've reached out to and balancing that between, I have to say, balancing that between people who are in the church, and by that I include our Roman Catholic and United and Lutheran brothers and sisters who are here tonight, and the others who aren't, and any others that we've made connections with, whether they be Muslim or Jew or whatever. And so so there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of it to keep in balance. So one of the things that is always in mind is how do we serve parishes, serve the regions? How do we connect with diocesan council? How do we keep the bishop up to date without harassing her in her busy schedule? And yet I'm confident in the support we get too. Thank you. But one of the things that, and it doesn't, denomination's not the issue, or type of faith, but it's the fact that we have this common cause that really allows us to be able to come together in community, as Carol Scott so eloquently put it one night and enthusiastically put it. So one of the things that I'll do later is do a little bit of a poll, because we do want to gather some information. But first, I think it would really be not a bad idea to give you about 15 minutes in breakout rooms, so that you can talk. Now, what I'm using here as my template is in the latest edition of the Anglican Journal, the primate of the church, the head of our church, or the head of the Anglican Church, I shouldn't say our, because we have a variety of people from a variety of faith traditions here. But she posed some questions, because she was inviting us in a new project called Surprised by the Spirit. And there are 3 questions that are posed in this. And if we could, and because the Environment Network kind of has a lot of the attributes of a parish, I think we could take this and run with it. We do pastoral care, we do worship together, we do missional work outside of the church, we do try to tend the church proper, not necessarily as a building, but as an institution of faith. And so I think that these questions could be good for discussion, because this is a lot of you don't see each other on a regular basis, or may not have seen each other before. So this might be kind of icebreakers for you, but they also might supply us with some information. So her questions are, what has our community, and I'll refer to this DEN as a community, what has our community learned from our experience this past year? So if people might write that down, because once you get to the breakout rooms, you don't get to see it. Next question is, what questions is our church being called to wrestle with? Well, so what questions is DEN being called to wrestle with? And what hopes for the future and signs of new life is the Spirit showing us? Which is really important to an environment network that wants to see a better normal. So what hopes for the future and signs of new life is the Spirit showing us? So with that, it's 5 minutes to 8. So that'll give you 5 minutes for each. If we come back at 10 after, that'll give you 5 minutes for each one. So I'm going to create 4 breakout rooms.
Yeah.
And send you off.
Into the great unknown.
Yeah. And you'll get a notice when it's closing down time. Okay. Open all rooms. Okay. So you can just hit on that and join and go. Margaret, are you there? Oh. Hi, folks. So
So an obvious one seems that, you know, here we are meeting online. You know, it's a big impact that it's had on the environment, that people are traveling around a lot less.
Right, right. And attending more meetings.
And that we can find creative ways when issues arise to find new and wonderful ways to accomplish the work.
Exactly.
Obstacles bring us opportunities.
Tori, are you taking notes on this?
Trying.
Yeah, okay. Just so that we have them for later.
One thing I've noticed is that we're traveling less, but we're also appreciating that we're traveling less. We're spending less time sitting in cars, waiting for stoplights, waiting, for something to start, get home again at night and tired out. So, that's been a learning thing too, because we've always assumed we have to go to these meetings and we have to drive there.
Right.
We've moved out of our past limitations into new kinds of relationships.
Yeah.
And an appreciation for the diversity of perspectives have
Yep.
we've been able to access.
Yeah.
Kind of missed that one. Could you say that again?
We've been able to appreciate the diversity
Should be,
of,
yeah.
of perspectives.
Mhm.
Mm.
The gallery has been very interesting because we're able to post our pictures to many people without having to be stuck in a place.
Yeah. Do
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
Andrew, do you know about the Hope and Inspiration Gallery of the Arts?
No.
Well, every year the diocese had, until this year, had a surplus, pandemic times hit. And so we would propose a grant and receive a grant. And one year it was a weekend away for anybody who was an environmentalist who just wanted to get away, and it was absolutely free at the Tatamagouche Center. It was spiritually focused, but no one was compelled to have to do anything in particular. Or they could join it all, or they could join none, whatever. We had people of faith, people who weren't of faith, but they came. And the next year we had the Eco Justice Fair that Bishop Sandra had mentioned. We had like 19 speakers and 30 some odd booths and whatever, on the tail end of a hurricane yet. That was fun. And then we were going to do a gallery, and we got this, we were going to have it at St. Paul's Church downtown in Halifax. And we had the artists all lined up, Lid's son being one of them. And he was one of the inspirations for the gallery. And then the pandemic hit. So we decided to go online. We weren't going to let it stop us. And now we have, I don't know, we've just had a new artist join us yesterday. We have poets, we have musicians. So we went from calling it Hope and Inspiration Art Show to Hope and Inspiration Art Gallery to Hope and Inspiration Gallery of the Arts. and so we have a Facebook page and there's a website, and the artists are they're so delightful. They're so much fun. They're so crazy. and we have fun, and yet we get to encourage them for their passion of painting, and painting nature and God's creation, and they get to inspire people to love the earth.
Mhm.
And so anyway, it's working. And Carol Ehlert is minimizing how much she does. She's the communications officer for the Environment Network. But that's how it works. Somebody just says, I'll do it, and then it's done. It's done. But it's a community of people that's really close, tight-knit, and loves each other. Just as the book club is now developing its sense of community. Just as Thursday evenings have become a community of people.
And what's positive about Thursday night is that you can attend or not. But roll call isn't taken, and various topics attract different people. But if you attend them all, you're expanding your understanding of a whole variety of things.
Yeah, it's everything from meditative practices to blue whale poo and deforestation.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah.
I'm gonna take off right now and go to another room. I'll let you work. Have your conversation.
Yeah.
Break out.
Well, from perhaps being as forthright as we should have been about climate change, but for many years, several years now, we've had the education on development and peace has been on climate issues, and it has had very little natural pickup. That doesn't mean that if we asked for a slideshow or something, we wouldn't get it somewhere. But that's not the same thing as sort of any kind of natural pickup. Now, it might be that I'm not bold enough. We are in a it's a question of approaching priests. We've had to amalgamate because of the churches are small. I mean, large churches, but smaller parish bases, smaller number of priests. So there's a lot of things going on in the Catholic Church. But I don't think that, I mean, when a pope makes a major encyclical like that, and then he follows it up with, seems to me like every second sermon, if you're listening, if you pick it up from the Vatican, he's addressing it. So I really don't know. I really don't know how most Catholics, who tend to be rather centrist, if the Pope says we'd better pay attention, I don't know where the disconnect is. I was kind of hoping maybe you guys might know, or you would have heard accidentally, or and I have garnered from this group and from Marion much more strength to tackle it and to go forward, not to kind of just sit and bemoan it. I had to rapidly discover much more about the environment myself. Unfortunately, I was very unaware and rather unscientific too, just in my natural bent, right? So it's been a little more difficult for me to step forward with that. But yeah, I have gained considerable confidence to move forward. We do have people like Jim Abraham, the meteorologist, on our side there, and he has given a sermon at one of our churches. So it's not it's not hopeless by any stretch. We're just not seeing much percolation. I guess that's the problem. There may be people out there who are concerned. I bet you there's people who are out there who are terrified, but we're not seeing much natural percolation, and we're a little not sure as to how to go about it. And many days people don't want to join a committee. That's deadening usually. And
that's why Marion started this as a network.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be a committee.
Yeah.
Which makes me ask then, what have we been called to wrestle with? Personally, for me, it's how many petitions come into my inbox on a regular basis, and how do you sort, like we mentioned, the wheat from the chaff, and which is something that you should put your energy towards. And often there's 4 or 5 different organizations all doing the same thing. Let's say for Bill, the Zero Emissions Act, there are a whole lot of organizations with petitions towards that. Does anybody wrestle with that concept? Do they work, and is it worthwhile?
I certainly do, but
Or
I think others
anything
should.
else that, or is there something else that I've wrestled with this year?
Here in Canada, we went from having forests, etc., that intook CO2 to because we've cut down so much of our forests, we're no longer a carbon sink anymore. We're giving off carbon, and it's a really, really bad thing. And that just changed.
And we have not reduced the carbon emissions either.
No.
We missed all the targets, and it's still really difficult to get our government to take the kind of action that has to be done at that kind of top level, because it can't all be done by individuals. We can do our part, but we can't do all of it.
Actually, that's what Jim Antel said. That spoke so much to people. The best thing we can do as an individual is to give up being an individual. We need to work collectively with teamwork, interdependently.
Okay, well, maybe it's not offered right this term or something.
Probably
Anyway,
not. You said
yeah.
you were connected.
But anyway, you don't hear, any theology around that in church, at least not where you and I attend. We should, I think,
Does anybody else want to contribute in terms of what we're wrestling with?
You have like minutes left.
How many
Okay.
minutes? Well, we should go back. Anyone want to say anything about hope or signs for new life?
Hopes for the future.
That the spirit is showing us.
I would say one sign of hope for me, and I don't know if it is for others, is that we just don't do it once and then meet again a month or 2 months later. Like, we meet regularly. So I think that helps to keep the momentum up.
Yeah. I have to say, I like it. If you're on the Facebook page, we're getting members all the time. We get new members, and joining the den, but also Thursday gatherings. We have people that come all the time, and we also have new people. So there's always new growth in it. There's always new stuff happening. Yes, always new stuff.
We get people from as many as 5 different provinces on a night. Interesting to note, we have people from 3 tonight, which is kind of narrow compared to what it normally is. But that's fine, because we have a great variety of people still. And I got to go. We'll have to go soon.
You're calling us back. Does anybody else want to say
You'll
anything?
get notice.